college can be great with all kinds of neat programs and people and opportunities and so on. And you can be, in some ways, overstimulated by all of that and do really stupid things. Emotional resilience means that when you get disappointed, when you fail, that you can come back to a place where you feel okay, where you feel safe. All right, I made a mistake, and I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to let this drag me down. But I think now that within the youth group itself, have special times with those who are going to be going off to college,
right,
and do some special things for them.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and it's October. And so we're excited about a conversation that is going to revolve around, arguably, one of the most important kind of transitional moments in a student's life. And as youth pastors, as educators, as people who are practitioners investing in the next generation, this is a conversation of paramount importance. Everybody needs to know and be equipped on how to guide through this season of transition. And so Dr. Bill Brown, who is our scholar in residence here at Student Leadership University this year, is going to walk us through. I'm just going to throw some questions and listen and try to take some notes myself. As always, we'll post our conversation or a summary of the conversation and takeaways on our blog in the coming week and a half or so. But Dr. Brown, thanks for, I know we're meeting a little later in October than we had originally planned, and that's because 2 hurricanes ago was the one that made its way up to the Carolinas, and primarily western North Carolina. So you tell us where you live roughly, exact address and how people can find. No, I'm just kidding. But tell us where the general area of that state where you live and how it's affected and how you guys are doing.
Yeah, we've lived here in western North Carolina almost 10 years now. And it's a lot different than Ohio. Ohio is so flat you can see Denver, just about anywhere in the state. But lovely mountains here. We've enjoyed being here so much. And I grew up in Florida, as you know, in Central Florida, and we used to get lots of hurricanes.
Right.
Some years 2 or 3, some years none, but we did not ever expect to get a hurricane here in western North Carolina. We had just had a terrible storm, kind of a storm up from the area in the Gulf that had just dumped all kinds of water. And right on the heels of that, like within hours, the winds and water of Helene hit, and it was amazing. And so fortunately, we live up a little bit higher, and we were without power and water and internet and all that for a while. Had to go stand in line at the grocery store, and most of them wouldn't take any cards because they couldn't.
Yeah.
And so we had to go stand in line at the ATM, and it was something. But we were very blessed. As we were talking earlier, there are still, I think it was about 100. Is that what you heard too?
As of late last week, there were still 100 unaccounted bodies they had not accounted for.
Back in the hills, there's a lot of people who live in homes that were built a long time ago, and they don't rent you out much. It's Beverly Hillbillies, the beginning of Beverly Hillbillies kind of stuff, and they're wonderful people driving back in there and meeting, but if winds and water comes through, devastating.
And mud. So, they said a lot of mud.
The church. I tell you what's awesome is that churches have really stepped up. On the TV, they had places to go for food, for water, for internet, to the place to sleep. They were almost all churches.
Wow.
And everybody opened their doors, and It's great. It's still a little dicey, but much better. Most of our all of our power and everything's been restored. Of course, we were in Australia the last 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
they had power down there.
Yeah, they had to
But
have. I'm glad they had
but
it in
anyway, yeah,
Australia.
it's the horrible time, and but it also drew a lot of us together. People I'd never met before,
Right.
and I really like that part of it.
Well, 2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago, we had a pretty good one, Hurricane Ian, blow through, and it came on down in that Fort Myers area, which you're very familiar with, Sanibel
Yeah.
Island, and boy, it is. We're 2 years removed, and it's going to be another couple years before they've recovered. So I haven't been to the Western in North Carolina since Helene happened. I have a lot of we're raising money and support, and we've done that through our partnership with Samaritan's Purse and other ways. But it just seems like it's one of those situations where it's going to take years to recover in some of the cities and some of the smaller areas too.
Yeah, an entire town that's been here 200 years called Marshall, right on the French Broad River, about 15 minutes from here. The whole town was underwater. I mean, the stores, you could just see the tops of the roofs of the stores for half a mile. I mean, it was that bad.
Wow.
And so they're basically saying the town is just wiped off the map. Although North Carolinians tend to be very resourceful and long-term minded. They hope to restore everything. Going to be very expensive and so on. But the pictures of that are just staggering.
Yeah.
Just absolutely staggering.
Yeah, I've seen that on the national media. Well, Doc, we're going to have a conversation today that revolves around this thing, this cataclysmic moment in which students transition from a high school experience to a collegiate campus. And as we're coming alongside this year, youth ministry practitioners, people it might be mostly youth pastors and youth workers, but also educators as well, but people who are investing in this next generation. If you were to make a short list of just stuff you need to know when you want to invest in the next generation, certainly this would be on that list.
Absolutely.
And so I want to just begin with this. What makes this transition so weighty, so important?
Well, for a couple of things. Also, you've been through that transition, so was I, and so we know what that's like. And you get away from the oversight of your parents, and you start finding out that not everybody at your university is as nice or as interested in the Bible as the other members of your youth group. And you're a little cavalier about life, so maybe you try some things you wouldn't, and so on and so forth. But I think what really gets me, Brent, is, in fact, I opened the blog with this, talking to heads of schools and youth pastor leaders and pastors about the transition to college. And they lament the number of top quality Christian young people that have been part of their group that fell away from Christ within weeks of getting on the campus.
Yeah.
And it's just, and some were youth leaders. They were, or not youth leaders, they were leaders within the youth group. And they were the godly spiritual leaders, and they go to University of North Carolina, and within a few weeks, they've already into drugs a little bit and had sex a lot and think it's great. And they're just different people. And they're figuring out, what did we do wrong or what did we not do right?
Right. There's a couple friends of mine wrote a book. Gosh, I guess it's been 7 or 8 years ago, called a different kind of college experience. And part of the beginning of the book, they said they discovered, and this was sociologists. It wasn't like a Christian perspective, but they had discovered that the habits that one forms leading to the first term will follow you for the rest of the midterms. And so, a lot of students are kind of like, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to absorb. I'm just going to like be passive and let college happen to me. I mean, like, this is a new environment. I'm going to sit back and I'm just going to let it come to me and experience a little bit of everything and figure out what this is, and then I'll settle down. And what they discovered is that leads to nothing but 4 more years of chaos. If you are very intentional with those first, usually midterms happen somewhere around week 5, 6, or 7. If you're very intentional about that first 5 to 7 weeks, whatever leads up to that marker that is the first midterms, that you have they found that there's a much higher percentage of those, whatever those habits were, following you for the rest of your college experience. But whatever you did for that leading up to that first midterm typically did follow you.
That's a good point, because everything is so new, and it's amazing what a lot of colleges and universities will do to catch the attention of the freshmen.
Right.
And a lot of it's not very good.
Yeah.
And so those hooks are set early, or attempted to be set early. And I think your word intentional is really, really important. What we want our young people to do is to, and we'll talk specifics here in just a sec, but what we want them to do is to be intentional about maintaining their walk with Christ, not getting involved in things that are going to be detrimental to not only what's happening now in their life, but in the future. Mm-hmm. And that intentionality is not something that is natural for a 17 and 18-year-old,
Right.
And so yeah, it's good. Once you if you're off to a good start, then and that's good to know. The halfway mark of the first semester is going
first
to
century. Yeah, it feels like a century
really
when you
be
get there.
a propelling motivation, I think, for the rest of it.
Yeah. So let me ask that question. Okay, you're a student pastor, and let's say you've got 14, 15-year-old young man or young lady. 3 years from now, they're going to be on a college campus. 4 years from now, they're going to be on a college campus. What can we do to spiritually prepare those students for that moment?
Oh, well, number one, you talk about it a lot, and let them know that, this is one of the things. When you get out from under your parents' watchful eye and away from this youth group, then you're going to be having to make decisions on your own. And what kind of decisions do you want to make? And it's always good to talk about what the bad decisions would be specifically, But yeah, it's a kind of thing that you need to start early, and the intentionality of it is important. I included in some things, and I don't know if you want to go through the list. I gave you some of the things, but always looking to the future, because working with young people, sometimes we want to captivate them and keep them there. Oh, we got a great youth group. They're so active. They're so vibrant and so on. And I wish we could just keep them forever. And what they're saying is, I wish we could keep them forever as a 12 or 13-year-old.
Right.
But to have a philosophy and a plan on helping them mature,
right,
and then to become individuals who are going to, on their own initiative, seek those things which honor Christ and are going to make them the kind of person that they really want to be.
Yes, sir. One of the things somebody taught me years ago was you need to see the years of student ministry, if you're a youth pastor, as a chapter that is so necessary that the next chapter will not be healthy if this chapter isn't healthy. And that you want a student to matriculate with the right appetite. So, for example, we're right now in the thick of this. My son is taking midterms for the very first time in college this week, and but one of the appetites, I'm so grateful for our home church and student ministry, and he had a small group of guys outside of the student ministry, a small group of guys he did a Bible study with at a Denny's every Saturday morning. And so that was such a part of him. He had an appetite for that. And so when he went off to college, he went, man, I'm hungry for that. I want that. And so but creating that appetite, and he found it, and he's cultivated it, and he's involved in something there, and but if they are just passive and they just absorb and they just take it all in, but you haven't really created an appetite for who they want to be and what they want their diet to look like when they get there, then they're not going to pursue those healthy things. And so that idea of this chapter is a prerequisite for the next, and I want them to walk out of this chapter with the right appetite. Is kind of been really helpful.
That's so good, because right now social media is telling our young people that they can be whatever they want to be. In fact, they need to do that, and that whatever they feel inside is far more important than anything that's actually real outside of them, et cetera, et cetera. And now many think, now I can experiment with who I really want to become or who I really am, and so on. And let's face it, in college dorms, even in Christian college dorms, as you know, it's not always the healthiest, most wholesome place to be growing up, and sometimes it is. And like in a Christian college, like you and I were at Bryan together.
Yes, sir.
And at Cedarville, you've got RRAs and RDs who are supposedly intentionally discipling as many as they can, and so on. And that's a help.
Yes.
But by and large, you want to put it, you want to implant it, as you were saying, in the life of the young person.
Right.
That I got so much out of this Bible study that I was in, because you remember I led a Bible study of guys every Friday morning.
Yes.
I ended up buying breakfast for everybody, but it was something I did 19 straight years. I never invited anybody to join. Rather, I just waited to see if anybody was interested. And every year we had somewhere between 8 and 12, and we'd read the best books out and talk about it and pray for one another, memorize scripture. And that was probably the highlight of my time at Bryan was those groups that met together.
Yes, sir. Well, you've been a professor, a president, a chancellor. I mean, so you've cared deeply about that season of, college and that collegiate experience. What do you wish youth pastors, youth workers knew that could help prepare a student academically? Okay, so that we're
academically,
yeah.
If they're not good students in high school, they're definitely not going to be good students in college. So I would really get them in a position where they're going to have a desire to want to grow and to learn, and that's why some things that I included in the list there are somewhat academic, and that is, number one, really start diving deep in apologetics, which is philosophy, and in Bible knowledge. When they're 12 and 13, you're teaching them basic principles, but you can, when they're up 15, 16, you can really start diving into some pretty heavy things.
Yeah.
And getting their mind in tune to learn and to grow, and using the mind that God gave them. And I think that that's something that they really, really can help as they get into college, because they can take those skills that they've learned in those Bible studies and that philosophy that they're learning in apologetics, and good apologetics, not some of the hammy stuff, but things that are going to really, make them think deeply about what it means to be a Christian in a world in which being a Christian is not necessarily accepted or
yes, sir,
or promoted, and so on.
Yes, sir.
And and have them do it together, get discussion groups together, all those kinds of things. That becomes real salt for the heart to want to grow.
What are some academic skills that you would encourage a student to cultivate in preparation for college?
Yeah, reading is by far the most important. In high school, usually, you do have to read some, but not like you do when you get to college. You got to read. Here's your stack of textbooks.
Right,
And
right.
you're going to read these over the next few months. and getting them used to reading, and that's where discussion groups help if you can. Make sure everybody's read and talk about it and so on. And because reading can be a incredible opportunity of growth, just settling down and reading and getting that skill down. But in the same way, have active reading where you're taking notes, underlining things, that kind of stuff, things that you want to remember, things that you need to remember. You will really increase your ability to get good grades, minimizing the amount of time that you're going to try to cram in the night before. And some will do this. I've recommended, and a lot of organizations do as well, that you learn how to read fast. I mean, there are some skills online you can learn how to do it, and it's just some basic skills that you have that you can really increase your reading up to incredible speeds and maintain an opportunity to be able to absorb all that. Because if you've got lots of reading and you're reading 3 times faster than everybody else, you can do the math there. That's going to really be helpful. And in fact, at seminary, at grad school, a lot of the guys and women were taking that speed reading class that the seminary was promoting and letting them do it for free because they knew it was so valuable.
Wow.
With the amount of reading that they were going to be doing and the comprehension that was necessary for them to come away with.
And that contributes to research skills, critical thinking skills, time management, and obviously creates somebody to be very effective in their study techniques as well.
Exactly. The critical skills they can develop in their Bible study, if you do it right. And the research is something else, a lot of people put that aside, but now with the technology, boy, you can do, I don't know if you remember, we used to have to do word studies, in seminary.
Yeah.
And we pull out all those books and we research this word and this cognate word and so on. Now you can get it done in about 10 seconds,
Yeah.
You just go to Logos or whatever, put it in, and boom, there it is. And that's not fair. No, I think it's great because I use that a lot and so on. And you can use AI creatively and well too, if you like. It can do some really good research for you. That you could find the same stuff, but it'd take you hours. When ChatGPT could look all that up for you and have it, in about 2 minutes. There's not much that's special to actually doing all of that, as long as you know how to use the results and are using that in your research effectively.
Right. A ChatGPT has just now become very quickly just par for the course in academia. But a lot of professors don't want it in the classroom.
Right.
And I know a student might get surprised by that when they show up, and now they've leaned on that. So will you speak to why it might not be the best thing inside a classroom, but it could be a helpful tool outside of the classroom?
Yeah, I think, take for example, if you want to find out how many times Jesus Christ is mentioned in the Quran and in what context and what that means for the Muslim understanding of Jesus. That just hit me in the head. So, but you could go to the Quran. One way is to read through the Quran and mark every time you find the name Jesus or Isa, Isa, and then look at the surrounding context and get it down. Or you can do a ChatGPT search, or no, you can Google it. That's the second step, and you find out how many there are, and then you can go to those places and find it. Or you can use ChatGPT and say how many times does the name Jesus occur in the Quran, and what's the context, and what is the overall perspective of Jesus in the Muslim holy book. Mm-hmm. And ChatGPT will do all that for you. The problem is with that last bit is that now you're getting it to do the thinking for you. You really need to look at those passages somewhat. You can get to all those passages, like I said, in about 2 minutes at the latest. But you should read it and think through it and see what it's saying and the implications of it and so on. Don't let the AI do your thinking and your rational and your not only your critical thinking, but your creative thinking as well.
Yes, sir.
You should be doing that and developing that yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's talk a little bit about social skills. Because when you're a youth pastor and you're trying to help a student think through the next stage of the journey, typically in your student ministry is a very eclectic set of social skills. You have some students who are very socially aware. You have some that are a little less so. You have all kinds of personality types. You have all kinds of accepted little quirks that are acceptable in one family but not in another. And student ministry is this melting pot of place where all that's tolerated. But then you're going to transition to an environment that's a little bit more tribal. I think we can say that about a collegiate experience. It's a lot more tribal. And you're going to have to step into some classroom environments and some other environments at college where you're going to have to be a little bit more socially aware and have to have a little bit more maturity in your social skills. So would you talk to us about social responsibility and maybe some of those interpersonal skills that are needed for that next stage of the journey?
That's just a really good point, Brent, because that's where a lot of the failures occur. Being approached by an upperclassman or woman and just feeling so giddy because I'm a freshman and they talk to me and all this stuff. And so you just throw everything you've learned about how you're supposed to behave out the window. And but see, that you can prepare people for the social circumstances and how they're supposed to respond. You talk about it. I would bring in people from your youth group who are in college now that are doing well, that are walking with the Lord. Bring them back and talk to the group and let them share.
That's a good word.
What they did that worked, and let them share what they did that didn't work and what the pitfalls may be. That probably has far more impact than you standing up there and saying all of those things, And but the social skills are important, and that's why I think campus ministries are really, really a good place to practice those, because by and large, most people are there for the spiritual atmosphere. They're there to grow in Christ. And maybe it's a replacement for their youth group. It's a more mature youth group, and there your social skills are able to be not necessarily fine-tuned, but at least you walk away with some friends. You walk away with some a sense of belonging, which is really what everybody wants. And but if you have somebody that can come back and talk to the youth group about all that, that's gold. I mean, that is really, really helpful. And which leads me to another point too. Your youth pastor, your youth group, and people in the youth group, they should stay in touch with those young men and young women that are going to college, and let them know they're praying for them, and they still consider them to be part of the group, and we miss you and we love you, and those kinds of things. And maintaining the relationships that you've had in the past. I know some youth groups actually go and visit major universities in the area, and several from the youth group will go and see one person who had been there in the youth group the year before, and now they're in college and so on, and now they're looking up to him or her, and as a freshman, that's a great feeling,
Yeah.
But it's there's no shortcut,
Right.
You can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up, and I think that's what a lot of them need.
Some of the interpersonal skills that you said, so the battle so oftentimes won or lost with these social skills. It took me. It was just a unawareness thing for me, just the basics, maintaining eye contact, asking the right questions, referring to my professor in the right way, just stuff that now is hopefully muscle memory and you do naturally. But I remember being 18, 19 years old going, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't realize even that I was had this blind spot, if you will, in my social skills, and making an appointment and showing up a little bit early. When you make an appointment with a professor, okay, well, plan on, if the appointment's at 2:55, be there at 2:50. Be there, and if they're not already in their office, it's a really good thing when a professor walks up and sees you sitting in a chair outside of his office or her office waiting on them. That makes a very good impression. That's a good interpersonal skill to have. The ability to take notes when somebody's talking to me in a one-on-one conversation when that person is a professor. Very important interpersonal skill. So there's just a litany of interpersonal skills that I had no idea that I did not possess, and so I think this is incredibly important. So I think youth pastors can also create environments where you can practice these things. And I one of the things we do on our leadership teams when I was a student pastor is I'd oftentimes bring somebody in from the community. And yes, I want the students to listen and to learn and to ask, but I wanted them to ask questions, take notes, make eye contact, be there early, sit at the table the right way, not fidget. There's all these different interpersonal skills. And I'm a fidgeter. I have to constantly be moving, so I've had to figure out how to compensate for that over the years. And there's ways to do that. And so the battle it's often won or lost. And the sad thing about social skills is the battle can be lost and you don't even know you've lost it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think this is incredibly important. Let's talk about emotional resilience a little bit, because you mentioned that that's also of vital importance. When you say emotional resilience, would you define that for us?
Well, emotional resilience means that when you get disappointed, when you fail, when you're overwhelmed, that you can come back to a place where you feel okay, where you feel safe, where you feel, all right, I made a mistake, and I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to let this drag out or drag me down. And then on the other side, the exhilaration of doing a lot of things at college. College can be great with all kinds of neat programs and people and opportunities and so on. And you can be, in some ways, overstimulated by all of that and do really stupid things. And so the resilience is, you want to be at a place where, okay, all of this is going around you and you're at peace, you're walking through and so on. And this is where I think this is really where campus ministries help a lot.
Yeah.
Because, you described how you're supposed to treat your professor and so on. If you go to university and you've never heard those things, you're probably going to make a lot of mistakes. Campus ministries many times will make sure the freshmen know exactly what they're supposed to be doing and give them a perspective of here's how you behave here, here's how you behave here, here's what you do here. When you're feeling bad, you come to us. We're going to take care of all that. But I think now that within the youth group itself, have special times with those who are going to be going off to college,
right,
and do some special things for them. And one of those would be to give insight into the practical areas, and because it's a roller coaster emotionally.
Yes.
But knowing everybody is going to be going through that means you should let everybody know they're going to be going through that, for them to expect that. And when you're really feeling down, call this person, when, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, those kinds of things. And I think that just getting everybody ready for the ride is important, particularly emotionally, because it's nonstop.
It is. And we live it's become so common in our vernacular to say mental health challenges. But when I went to college, that I don't ever remember that phrase being used, and so we are in an age in which we go, okay, now we have this category, at least to kind of park everything. But I think it's also important to say that to help students understand, like when you get stressed, that doesn't mean that college is bad. That just means you're moving into a phase of life where you're going to have to be able to manage stress. I've talked to a lot of students who, and I don't mean this in a crude way or a demeaning way, but students who never had to, like their parents always would swoop in and rescue them from the stress or make it all better. And they're in college and they're like, well, I don't have somebody swooping in, so that means something's wrong, and I need to get back to a place where somebody's swooping in and taking care of this for me. But it's really no. That's just part of adulting. And by the way, it was a mistake on your parents' part not to let you learn how to manage stress. And so right. That comes up quite often under this category of, maintaining your mental health and emotional resilience, and quite honestly, the belief that somebody needs to rescue you from the stress every time detracts from mental health, and so it's of utmost importance to see that. But at the same time, Doc, anxiety is a real thing. And a lot of students in college experience it. So let's say you've got a college student who's experiencing anxiety. What would you say to them? What would you say to a pastor and how to connect with that student or help that student?
Yeah, because there are times where, sometimes for no specific reason, where you feel really, really depressed. And anxiety, of course, is probably the most used word to describe adolescents and those who are in their mid to late teens as well. It's just a part of the world in which we live now. Social media is a big cause for that. But when you're that low, you really need somebody to talk to. And in the youth group, help everybody learn to begin to pray and to get in the Word and so on. But I know some youth groups that have a promise that if you're really feeling bad, you need to call me. Sometimes it's the youth pastor, sometimes it's their friends and so on. Promise me you'll do that. And just having that there is just wonderful. It's just somebody to talk to that knows you, that loves you, that cares for you. And but again, that emotional resilience, just you need to be prepared for a roller coaster ride.
Right.
You're going to be at the top of exhilaration. You're going to be at the bottom and the depths of depression. It's just part of what's going on. Number one, you're still as a young person developing the kinds of parts of your body and parts of your mind that are not going to be stable. And But I just think preparing everybody for that goes a long way to keep them from thinking there's something wrong with me,
right?
Or I'm at the end, and so on. When they're really not.
Yeah. That prefrontal cortex isn't quite fully developed yet. Yep. The young ladies get it quicker than the guys, but either way, when you first get to college, neither of them have that prefrontal cortex fully developed. So, well, cool. We don't have time to go through every single one of the components because you've given such a great exhaustive list. But there's a couple that I want to make sure we don't miss before we're done with our conversation today. And one of them is parental involvement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's oftentimes not discussed. It's almost like, okay, no, I'm in college now, so there is this natural, whether it's right or wrong, there's this natural knee-jerk of, yeah, I'm separate from my parents. And so what can a youth, let's say a youth pastor, do to help both the student and the parent understand the role of the parent for this particular season?
Well, if you have a youth group, there will be some youth there who are from single-parent families.
Certainly.
Who are from parents who really don't care about their kids, and that's why they're in the youth group, and right. So on. So I think that what we should do are several things. One, that we need to have a pretty full-fledged approach to helping them transition into college, and it starts probably in no later than beginning of grade 11, and then let the parents know this is what we're doing, and then have times when the youth and the parents come together. Those who are going into college will be in the next year or two, and that you can all talk together so they all hear the same kinds of things, and you can make recommendations about keeping in touch, and you can make recommendations about laying down the law for them while they're in college, and those kinds of things, and let there be Q&A and those kinds of things. Those special times with the students who are going to be going into the to higher education soon are really, really good. They're encouraging for the parent and for the student as well, because he or she's looking around. All these people, are concerned about me. They care about me, and I know I felt like I don't want to let them down.
Right.
And but yeah, parental involvement and even parental involvement through the youth pastor and the youth ministry, I think, is really, really a key.
Yeah, we all have a heart for a variety of students that come from some difficult places, and the student ministry can be a conduit for a student, a college student, to receive the parental care that they should receive, even if they're not, especially if they're not getting it from their own, let's say, biological parent. What are some ways parents can and should be involved in their children's lives when those children are college students?
Well, I think every family is going to do it different. If they live close enough, have the kids come home regularly or go visit regularly. Have regular phone calls. I know some families, they have a regular Thursday night phone call, and where mom and dad are on the phone talking to the student, how's it going, and this and that, and so on. What do you need, etc. And that involvement, keeping the family involved, is really, really good. Often happens if you go away to college, you kind of cut off from your parents, and you come back, and they've changed so much just in 6 months. When it's really you that's changed, it's just you're seeing them through different eyes. But parents who are really, really reaching out, parents who are wanting to continue to be a part of their son or daughter's life, will find ways to interact with them.
Right.
And I know some students who, when something good happens at the university, they text mom or dad.
Yeah.
And when something bad happens, they text mom or dad.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And I think mom and dad think that's great too, because they're walking alongside of them.
Yeah.
Technology allows us to do that too.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Neat.
Technology is, sometimes in student ministry, as somebody who cares deeply about this generation, you get so frustrated with technology. Like, oh my gosh, we're addicted to every social platform. There's all this other stuff. But since my son's gone off to college, I've been so grateful, because we have family texts, and if I want to see him, we FaceTime. I can see him,
Right.
And I could, and I get a call from him usually once a day, and we talk for about 5 to 7 minutes. We do a quick checkup, and he tells me how his day's going and asks a question or two, or we just kind of catch up. But I do think that for parents who have children in college, and youth pastors can kind of help lay out this paradigm for a parent. I do think that you got to have a routine of communication. But then you got to have moments of celebration, moments you're anticipating that child being home, and that's going to be a celebration. And it's going to be a celebration not where the whole world revolves around them, but you stop and you recognize them, you celebrate the fact that they're home. And for example, when Gabriel came home last week for his first trip home since he'd gone away to college, we had a party. But then the next day, my wife had a list of chores she needed from him. So of course, it's both, And I think both are important. but there was celebration, right? And so I think there needs to be communication, and there needs to be celebration, and then I think there just needs to be whatever it takes to have a constant relationship with that child. Like you said, you don't want to look up and you went, okay, I haven't spoken to my child in a month. Mm-hmm. That's not healthy. Mm-hmm. That's not good. You don't want to look up and not be aware of what they're struggling with. That's not good. And if they're the ones not reaching out, that's an even bigger red flag. And so, yeah, I think that, but I think parental involvement, I would just say this is kind of an overarching statement, Doc. If they're your child and they're still under the authority of your home, even if they're in a college dorm room, you're still responsible for their discipleship. You are still the key voice in their life that is supposed to guide their journey towards Jesus as they walk in the Lord. So, so anyways, I would say to our parents, don't forget that. Don't forget that.
Yeah, and they need encouragement from us, youth pastors and so on, as to what is appropriate. Because if you have your first child going away to college, a parent, like, what do we do? And what are we supposed to do? We don't want to overreach. We don't want to pull back, and giving them the freedom to have that conversation with their son or daughter.
Right.
But at the same time, knowing that they're going to have to figure that out for themselves, because a lot of times their high school years, at least, the high school years sometimes are very difficult for parents and teenagers, as we know, and they don't want that to continue.
Yeah, when I dropped Gabe off at college, they had a parent meeting, and like all colleges do, Christian, non-Christian, it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to have a parent thing. And they said, hey, we know, it was probably, whatever, there was hundreds of parents or whatever, and the guy was sharing, and he goes, hey, I know that you're not supposed to be a helicopter parent, but don't be a bulldozer parent either. Like, don't let them be a student. Let them struggle. Let them don't clear the path for them. Make everything easy. They're here. They've got to learn, and they've got to learn how to learn in this environment. And so, don't be a bulldozer parent either. And so, but that was a good word. That was a good word.
Yeah, that's good.
So, anyways, well, Doc, one of the things that just keeps coming to my mind as we're having this conversation is, if you're a youth pastor, if you're involved in next gen ministry, you should probably have, I'm going to use an old-fashioned phrase, but you should probably have a binder or an online file or something, but you should have a binder, and that binder is how you guide a student across the bridge from student ministry into college. And it needs to be something you're constantly adding to. You're learning more about how to do that better every year as somebody who is investing in students. And so one of the things I want to say about our conversation is that you summarize everything into kind of a document that we put up on our blog after our YouTube conversation. And so everybody who's involved in Next Gen Ministry, that document will be there, and then they can take these categories and use that to build their binder, use that to build their file, use that to build that bridge, and use these categories as kind of their template or paradigm by which to get that started.
Well, the worst thing is not to do anything, particularly as youth pastor in ministry of the church. It's epidemic the way many young people who are faithful to their youth group, their church, to Christ, and then it doesn't take but a few weeks.
Yes, sir. At
State University for them to ditch the whole thing.
Ditch the whole thing, yes, sir.
And that's sad, and it could have been avoided.
Yes, sir.
Ladies
and gentlemen, I hope that this has been another beneficial conversation. And if it has, I'm going to ask you to make a comment below. If you have a question, I know that this is one of those hyper practical topics. Like, okay, that bridge from student ministry to college years, like as a youth pastor, as a student pastor, there's going to be questions next year that we didn't have this year. So if you have a question about this season or about how to build that bridge for a student, please please drop that in the comments below. Know that Dr. Brown, we will make sure that Dr. Brown gets that and that he responds to that. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. Thanks so much for letting us hang out with you today. And until we meet again, wander well and shine like stars.